The Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing into 1,000 tiny rainbows across the polished marble floors. The air buzzed with the hum of conversation, the clink of champagne flutes, and the soft strains of a string quartet playing Vivaldi. It was the kind of charity gala where New York's elite gathered to flaunt their wealth while pretending to care about the cause tonight, a foundation for clean water initiatives in developing nations. David Caldwell, a white American tech billionaire with sharp blue eyes and a jawline that could cut glass, stood at the edge of the room, nursing a glass of whiskey. At 28, he was the youngest CEO in the room, a prodigy who'd built his company Nexus Innovations into a global powerhouse. But tonight, his mind wasn't on the speeches or the networking. It was on Victor Lang, his cunning CFO, whose whispered machinations had begun eroding David's control over his empire. David's pale skin contrasted sharply with his tailored black tuxedo, the crisp white shirt beneath it, catching the light as he tilted his head back to sip his drink. The whiskey burned, but did little to dull the weight of betrayal pressing against his chest. Victor had been planting seeds of doubt among the board's subtle moves to undermine David's leadership. The stress of it all had driven him to this gala seeking a momentary escape in the haze of alcohol and opulence. He scanned the room, his gaze restless until it landed on her. Mia Harper stood at the open bar, her presence like a quiet storm amid the gala's chaos. An African-American woman with rich, dark skin that seemed to glow under the soft lighting, she carried herself with an effortless grace that drew eyes without demanding them. At 25, she was a freelance photographer, and her sharp wit and keen eye for detail made her a favorite among the city's art scene. Her hair was styled in a cascade of tight curls, framing a face with high cheekbones and eyes that held a spark of mischief and mystery. She wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves, the fabric catching the light as she leaned against the bar sipping a martini. David didn't know what pulled him toward her. Maybe it was the way she seemed apart from the crowd, or her slight smirk when a pompous guest tried to impress her with his wealth. Whatever it was, he found himself crossing the room, the whiskey in his hand forgotten. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the bar stool beside her. Mia's eyes flicked up, sizing him up in a single glance. She said only, "If you're planning to bore me with stock market talk," her voice smooth but edged with challenge. He chuckled, settling onto the stool. "No stocks tonight, just whiskey and bad decisions." Her smirk widened. "That's a dangerous combination, Mr. Caldwell." He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You know who I am." "Hard not to," she replied, stirring her martini with an olive skewer. "Your face is on every tech magazine cover. Plus, you're the only one here drinking whiskey as if it's a personality trait." David laughed, a real laugh that he hadn't let out in months. "And you are Mia Harper," she said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm against his. "I'm here to photograph the event, but I'm off the clock now. Figured I'd enjoy the free drinks." Their conversation flowed like the whiskey in his glass, smooth, warm, and intoxicating. They traded barbs about the gala's over-the-top decor, the pretentiousness of the guests, and the absurdity of spending thousands on a plate of rubbery chicken for charity. Mia's wit was sharp, her laughter infectious, and David leaned closer, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. She wasn't like the others in the room, all polished facades and calculated charm. There was something raw about her, something real. Hours passed, the gala fading into a blur. The bartender announced last call, and David glanced at his watch, surprised to find it was nearly midnight. "This place is winding down," he said, his voice low. "Want to get out of here?" Mia's eyes met his, a flicker of hesitation, giving way to a spark of recklessness. "Your place or mine?" He grinned. "Mine's closer." The penthouse at the top of his Manhattan tower was a study in modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows, with a view of the city skyline, sleek furniture, and a bar stocked with bottles that cost more than most people's rent. But neither noticed the decor as they stumbled through the door, lips locked, hands exploring. The night became a whirlwind of passion, their bodies moving together with an urgency that drowned out the world outside. Mia's warm and soft skin pressed against David's as they fell into bed, the city lights casting shadows across their entwined forms. It was a night of abandon, of forgetting the pressures of their respective worlds, David's corporate battles and Mia's constant hustle to make a name for herself. For those fleeting hours, it was just them lost in each other, the rest of the world reduced to a distant hum. When David woke the next morning, the bed was empty. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the rumpled sheets where Mia had been. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and noticed a paper on the pillow beside him. In neat, looping handwriting it read, "Thank you for last night. I'm sorry." No signature, no number, just those words. He stared at it, confused and longing, twisting in his chest. Mia Harper was gone, leaving only a trace of her perfume and a memory that would haunt him. Outside, the city was waking up, but the silence was deafening in the penthouse. David didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything, not just for him, but for the woman who'd slipped out of his life as quickly as she'd entered it. Victor Lang's hired eyes were watching in the shadows, capturing moments that would soon become weapons in a game David didn't even know he was playing. The morning sun cast long shadows across the penthouse, its golden rays doing little to warm the chill that settled over David Caldwell as he stared at the note in his hand. "Thank you for last night. I'm sorry." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight he couldn't grasp. Mia Harper had vanished, leaving behind only this cryptic message and the faint scent of jasmine on the sheets. He turned the paper over, half hoping for more, a phone number, an explanation, but there was nothing. Just those 8 words written in ink seemed to mock his confusion. David stood, running a hand through his disheveled hair, and crossed to the window. Manhattan sprawled below, a concrete jungle, waking to the rhythm of honking taxis and hurried footsteps. He tried to piece together the night before the gala, the bar, Mia's sharp wit, and how her laughter had cut through his defenses. Their connection had been electric, undeniable, yet she'd chosen to walk away without a backward glance. Why? The question gnawed at him, but he had no answers, only the echo of her touch and the ache of her absence. He dressed quickly, wearing jeans and a crisp white shirt, and headed to his office at Nexus Innovations. The sleek glass tower was a monument to his ambition, but today it felt like a cage. As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed with a message from his assistant board meeting at 10. "Victor's been talking to the directors again." David's jaw tightened. Victor Lang, his CFO, had been circling like a vulture, planting doubts about David's leadership. The man was a master of manipulation, his smiles as sharp as the contracts he drafted. David had built Nexus from a dorm room startup to a tech giant, but Victor's ambition threatened to unravel it all. David tried to focus at the office, but his mind kept drifting back to Mia. He pulled up her name on his phone, searching for her online. Her photography website was a gallery of stunning landscapes and candid portraits, each image infused with a sense of story. There was no contact information, only a booking form and a few glowing client reviews. He considered sending a message, but hesitated. What would he even say? "Thanks for the night. Why'd you run?" He closed the tab, frustrated, and turned to the stack of reports on his desk. Unbeknownst to David, Victor Lang was already moving against him. The CFO had hired a private investigator to tail David at the gala, a precaution born of paranoia and opportunity. The investigator's camera had captured everything David and Mia leaving the bar together. Their laughter as they climbed into his car, the lights of the penthouse flickering on late into the night. The photos were grainy but damning perfect leverage for Victor's plan to discredit David. A scandal involving the CEO's personal life could sway the board, painting David as reckless and unfit to lead. Victor sat in his office flipping through the images on his tablet, a smirk curling his lips. "This," he murmured, "is going to be fun." Meanwhile, Mia Harper was grappling with a revelation of her own. She stared at a pregnancy test in her Brooklyn apartment, a modest studio filled with camera equipment and stacks of prints. The two pink lines were unmistakable, a truth that hit her like a freight train. She sank onto her couch, her hands trembling as she processed what this meant. The night with David had been a moment of weakness, a surrender to desire after months of guarding her heart. She'd known who he was, a billionaire with a world of power and enemies. Getting involved with him was a risk she couldn't afford, especially now. Mia's life had never been easy. She'd clawed her way up from a rough childhood, using her camera to capture beauty in a world that often felt cruel. She'd learned to rely on herself to keep her walls high and her secrets close. The idea of bringing a child into David's orbit, where wealth and influence came with danger and scrutiny, was unthinkable. She thought of the gala, the way the room had buzzed with hidden agendas. David might have been charming, but he was part of that world, and she wanted no part of it for her child. She decided quickly, as she always did when survival was at stake. She packed a bag, left a note for her landlord, and booked a train ticket to upstate New York. Far from the city's chaos, a small town seemed like the only place to start over. She didn't know how to make it work, but she'd figure it out. She always had. As the train pulled out of Penn Station, Mia rested a hand on her stomach, a mix of fear and determination settling over her. She was protecting her child, even if it meant leaving behind the man who'd stirred something in her she hadn't felt in years. Back in Manhattan, David threw himself into work trying to bury the sting of Mia's disappearance. He met with board members, countered Victor's subtle jabs, and pushed Nexus toward its next big project, a cloud-based AI platform that could redefine the industry. But late at night, when the office was empty and the city lights glowed beyond his window, he found himself thinking of her. The note was still in his wallet, folded carefully, a reminder of a night he couldn't shake. He didn't know about the child growing inside her, or the photos Victor was preparing to weaponize. All he knew was that Mia Harper had slipped through his fingers, and the emptiness she left behind was more than he could bear. The small town of Willow Creek, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, was a world away from the glittering chaos of Manhattan. Its main street was lined with quaint shops, a diner that served bottomless coffee, and a library where the librarian knew every patron by name. Mia Harper had chosen this place for its quiet anonymity and the chance to build a life far from the shadows of her past. Her studio apartment above a bookstore was modest, filled with the soft hum of a life rebuilt. Her photographs covered the walls, landscapes of misty valleys, and candid shots of townsfolk at the farmer's market. In the center of it all were Emma and Noah, her twins, now 4 years old, their laughter filling the space like sunlight. Mia had given birth to the twins 9 months after leaving New York, a whirlwind of fear and joy that had reshaped her world. Emma was the bolder of the two, with a fierce curiosity and a knack for drawing intricate patterns in crayon. Noah was quieter, his thoughtful eyes always watching, as if he understood more than he let on. Raising them alone was a challenge. Mia worked as an art teacher at the local community center, supplementing her income with freelance photography gigs. Every dollar was stretched, every moment precious, but she made it work. The townsfolk had embraced her, unaware of the secrets she carried, and Willow Creek had become a sanctuary, even if her heart sometimes wandered back to that night in the city. Life wasn't easy, but it was hers. Mornings began with the twins' chatter as they ate oatmeal at the small kitchen table, their backpacks ready for preschool. Afternoons were spent at the community center, where Mia taught children to paint and see the world through a lens of color and light. Evenings were for bedtime stories, tucking Emma and Noah into their shared room, and then collapsing onto the couch with a cup of tea, her camera beside her. But in the quiet moments when the town slept and the stars burned bright above the hills, Mia's thoughts drifted to David Caldwell. She wondered where he was, what he was doing, and whether he ever thought of her. She'd seen his name in the news. Nexus Innovations was soaring, but whispers of corporate intrigue followed him. She pushed those thoughts away, focusing on the life she'd built. But the weight of her secret, the twins' true parentage, never left her. Mia had made a choice that night in Manhattan, leaving before David could wake, before the complications of his world could entangle her. She didn't regret it, but the ache of what might have been lingered. She'd kept the truth from everyone, even her closest friends in Willow Creek. The twins were hers, and she'd protect them from the chaos of David's life, from the power plays and media scrutiny that came with his name. But sometimes when Emma laughed, or Noah tilted his head in a certain way, she saw echoes of David mannerisms she couldn't ignore. It was a reminder that her secret wasn't just hers, it belonged to them too. Meanwhile, David Caldwell was fighting a different kind of battle in Manhattan. Nexus Innovations had grown into a behemoth, its AI platform revolutionizing industries, from healthcare to finance. But success came with a cost. Victor Lang, his CFO, had escalated his campaign to undermine David, sowing distrust among the board with carefully crafted rumors and selective data leaks. David spent his days in boardrooms countering Victor's moves with charm and strategy, and spent his nights poring over financial reports to uncover the man's schemes. He was winning but barely, and the strain was etched into the lines around his eyes. David's personal life was a wasteland. He dated occasionally, but no one held his attention. The women he met were polished, ambitious, part of the same elite world he navigated daily, but they lacked the spark he'd felt with Mia. That night at the Waldorf Astoria haunted him, not just the passion, but the connection, the way she'd seen through his facade. He still carried her note tucked into his wallet like a talisman, though he hadn't read it in months. He'd tried to find her once, hiring a private investigator, but the trail went cold in Brooklyn. Mia Harper was a ghost, and David had no idea she was raising his children in a town 3 hours away. Victor, meanwhile, was biding his time. The photos from that night at the gala were locked away in a safe, a trump card he hadn't yet played. He knew David was distracted and vulnerable, and he relished the thought of exploiting it. The CFO had bigger plans, a takeover bid disguised as a merger with himself at the helm. The photos of David and Mia were insurance, a way to tarnish David's reputation if the board wavered. Victor didn't know about the twins, but he sensed Mia was a weak point, a mystery he could unravel to his advantage. In Willow Creek, Mia's life revolved around routine. She took the twins to the park, where they chased fireflies in the summer dusk. She sold her photos at the weekly market, her landscapes earning praise from locals and tourists alike. But she was always cautious, always looking over her shoulder. The city felt far away, but the internet was everywhere, and David's name popped up in articles she couldn't avoid. She read about Nexus's triumphs, about rumors of internal strife, and wondered if he was okay. She told herself it didn't matter, he was a stranger now, a memory from a life she'd left behind. But late at night, when the twins were asleep and the house was still, she'd pull out a single photo she'd kept from that night, a blurry shot of the Manhattan skyline taken from David's penthouse window. It was all she could hold a reminder of when she'd let her guard down. The years passed quietly, each one blending into the next. Emma and Noah grew taller, their personalities sharper. Mia's photography gained a small but loyal following, and her work featured in regional galleries. David, meanwhile, pushed Nexus to new heights, but the cost was his peace. He was lonelier than he'd ever admit, his heart tethered to a night he couldn't forget. Neither knew the other's struggles, or how close they were to colliding again. Mia taught her children to dream big, but stay grounded in Willow Creek. In Manhattan, David fought to hold on to his empire, unaware that the family he didn't know he had was waiting just beyond the horizon. The air in Willow Creek carried the crisp scent of autumn, with leaves tumbling in shades of crimson and gold across the town square. The annual Willow Creek Art Festival was in full swing, a vibrant celebration of local talent that drew visitors across the state. Booths lined the streets, offering everything from hand-thrown pottery to homemade jams, while a folk band played on a makeshift stage. Mia Harper's booth was a focal point, her photographs displayed on easels and hung from a canopy. Her landscapes captured the region's soul, misty hills, at dawn rivers glinting under moonlight. But her candid shots of the townsfolk drew the most attention, each frame telling a story of joy or quiet resilience. Mia stood behind her booth, arranging a stack of prints, while watching Emma and Noah playing nearby with the children. The twins were a whirlwind of energy, darting between booths and giggling as they chased a stray balloon. Mia smiled, her heart swelling at the sight of them. This was her world now, small and grounded, far from the chaos of her past. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back, blending seamlessly with the crowd. But beneath her calm exterior, she was always alert, guarding the secret that tied her to a man she'd left behind. David Caldwell hadn't planned to be in Willow Creek. Nexus Innovations had organized a corporate retreat at a nearby resort, a team-building exercise to ease tensions among the board. David reluctantly agreed, desperate for a break from the city and Victor Lang's relentless scheming. The retreat was a blur of meetings and forced camaraderie, but on the final day, a colleague suggested visiting the art festival. David, restless and eager for a distraction, tagged along. He wandered the festival aimlessly, his tailored jacket out of place among the flannel-clad locals, his mind still tangled in thoughts of Nexus and the fight to keep his company. Then he saw her. Mia was adjusting a photograph, her movements precise and focused. The sight of her hit David like a punch, stealing his breath. He stopped dead in his tracks, the festival fading around him. It was Mia Harper, the woman who'd slipped out of his life 5 years ago, leaving nothing but a note and a lingering ache. She looked different, softer somehow, but the spark in her eyes was unmistakable. He stood frozen, unsure whether to approach, his heart pounding with longing and uncertainty. Mia felt his gaze before she saw him. A prickle ran down her spine, and she looked up, her eyes locking with his. For a moment, the world stopped. The noise of the festival, the crowd chatter, and the music vanished, leaving only the two of them. David's expression was a storm of emotions, surprise, hope, and something deeper, something raw. Mia's breath caught her hands tightening around the frame she held. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, she wasn't ready. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mia," he replied, stepping closer. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the chaos inside him. "It's been a while." She nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, a while." They stood there, the air thick with unspoken questions. David wanted to ask why she'd left, why she hadn't called what she'd been doing all these years. Mia tried to tell him to leave to protect the life she'd built, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, they fell into a cautious conversation dancing around the past. He asked about her photography. She asked about his company. It was polite, strained, but beneath it, the spark from that night 5 years ago flickered to life. The twins ran up, interrupting the moment. "Mommy, look!" Emma held up a painted rock, her face beaming. Noah trailed behind, clutching a similar treasure. David's eyes flicked to them, a question forming, but Mia quickly steered the conversation away, introducing them as her children, without elaborating. She saw the curiosity in David's gaze, the way he studied their faces. But she kept her answers short, her tone guarded. David bought one of her photographs, a shot of a frozen lake under a winter sky. He lingered at her booth, reluctant to leave, and Mia felt the pull of him, the same magnetic force that had drawn her to him at the gala. But she couldn't let it happen again. She had Emma and Noah to protect, and David's world was still too dangerous, too unpredictable. She hesitated when he asked if they could grab coffee, and then agreed, but only to keep things civil. They parted with a promise to meet the next day, though Mia wasn't sure she'd show. As she tucked the twins into bed that night, Mia's mind raced. Seeing David had reopened wounds she thought had healed. She wanted to tell him about the twins to share the truth, but fear held her back. What if he tried to take them? What if his enemies, men like Victor Lang, came after them? She couldn't risk it. Yet as she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the photo David had bought, she felt the weight of her secret more than ever. He was here in her world, and the collision she'd feared for 5 years was happening whether she was ready or not. The Willow Creek diner was a cozy relic of a bygone era, with checkered floors, vinyl booths, and a jukebox that played Johnny Cash on a loop. Mia Harper sat across from David Caldwell in a corner booth, the late afternoon sun filtering through the blinds, casting slanted shadows across their untouched coffee cups. The air between them was heavy with the weight of 5 unspoken years, the hum of the diner's chatter, a fragile buffer against the tension. Mia's hands fidgeted with a napkin, tearing it into tiny pieces, while David leaned forward, his eyes searching hers for answers she wasn't sure she could give. Their meeting the day before at the art festival had left Mia rattled. She'd almost skipped this coffee, but something curiosity guilt, or the pull of that night long ago, had brought her here. David, too, was wrestling with his own storm of emotions. Seeing Mia again had reignited a spark he'd thought long extinguished, but her guarded demeanor and the presence of her children had stirred questions he couldn't ignore. He'd spent the night replaying their brief encounter, wondering what she was hiding, why she seemed so determined to keep him at arm's length. The conversation started slowly circling safe topics: the festival, the weather, the charm of Willow Creek. But David's patience was fraying. He'd noticed the twins Emma and Noah. Their familiar features made his chest ache. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Mia's story, and he needed to know. "Mia," he said, his voice low but firm. "I saw a photo at your booth yesterday. You with the kids. They look like me." Mia froze, her breath catching. She'd dreaded this moment since she'd seen him at the festival. The photo had been a careless slip, a candid shot of her with Emma and Noah at the park, their faces lit with laughter. She'd meant to take it down before the festival, but in the rush she'd forgotten. Now David's eyes bore into hers, and she knew there was no escaping the truth. "David, She trailed off, her voice trembling. She looked down at the shredded napkin, then back at him, her resolve crumbling. "They're yours, Emma and Noah. They're our children." The words hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. David's face went still, his expression a mix of shock, disbelief, and something more profound, something that looked like love. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair, trying to process the revelation. "Mine," he whispered almost to himself. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mia's eyes glistened, but she held his gaze. "I was scared, David. That night, it was a moment, a beautiful one. But your world, it's full of power and danger. I saw how people looked at you at that gala, and how they schemed. I couldn't bring a child into that. And when I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to protect them, even if it meant leaving you behind." David's jaw tightened, a storm of emotions flickering across his face. Hurt anger and a fierce longing. "You could have trusted me, Mia. I would have." He stopped, shaking his head. I don't know what I would have done, but I deserve to know. They're my kids too. I know, she said softly, her voice breaking. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't want them caught up in your battles, the media, or whatever was going on with your company. I wanted them to have a safe, everyday life. David leaned forward, his hands clenched on the table. And what about me? Did you think I wouldn't care? That I wouldn't want to be part of their lives? Mia's tears spilled over, and she wiped them away quickly. I didn't know what you'd want. You were a stranger, David. One night doesn't make a family. I couldn't risk it. The diner seemed to shrink around them, the world narrowing to this moment. David's mind raced images of Emma and Noah flashing through his head, their laughter, their small hands clutching painted rocks. He felt a surge of love for them, instant and overwhelming, but also a sharp pang of betrayal. Mia had kept this from him for 5 years, raising his children in secret, while he fought his battles alone. I want to meet them, he said finally, his voice steady but laced with urgency. I want to know them, Mia. I'm their father. Mia nodded, her throat tight. Okay. But we do this on my terms. They're my world, David. I won't let anything hurt them. Not your enemies, the press, or even you. He wanted to argue, to demand more, but the look in her eyes stopped him. She was a mother protecting her children, and he couldn't fault her for that. Fine, he said, your terms, but I'm not going anywhere. They sat silently for a moment, the weight of the truth settling between them. Mia felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief at finally sharing her secret fear of what it would mean for her carefully built life. David, meanwhile, was grappling with the sudden reality of fatherhood, his heart swelling with a love he hadn't known he could feel. As they left the diner, David's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. Victor's pushing for an emergency board meeting. He's got something big. David's stomach twisted. Victor Lang, his CFO, had been a thorn in his side for years, and the timing couldn't be worse. He glanced at Mia, who was watching him with guarded eyes, and knew he had to protect this newfound connection, whatever it took. Unbeknownst to them, Victor's private investigator had been in Willow Creek, trailing David after spotting him at the festival. The man had seen Mia's booth, the photo of her with the twins, and had pieced together enough to report back. Victor sat in his Manhattan office, a smirk playing on his lips as he reviewed the investigator's findings. The twins were David's, and Mia was the key to unraveling him. Victor didn't know how to use this, but the leverage was delicious, a weapon to wield when the time was right. The autumn air in Willow Creek was sharp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. Mia Harper stood on the porch of her small apartment watching Emma and Noah play in the yard below, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The twins were oblivious to the storm brewing in their mother's heart, the weight of the truth she'd shared with David Caldwell just days ago. Telling him about the twins had been like opening a door she'd kept locked for years, and now she wasn't sure she could close it again. David had stayed in Willow Creek longer than planned, renting a cabin near Mia and the twins at the edge of town. Under Mia's watchful eye, he'd met Emma and Noah the day after their diner conversation. The twins were initially shy, clutching their mother's hands, but David's easy charm, honed from years of navigating boardrooms, won them over. He'd brought them a kite, and they'd spent an afternoon in the park laughing as it soared above the trees. Mia had watched from a distance, her heart torn between warmth and fear. David was a natural with the twins, but every smile, every gentle word felt like a step toward a life she wasn't sure she could embrace. However, trust was fragile, and David's initial joy at discovering his children was now laced with anger. He couldn't shake the sense that Mia had manipulated him, keeping the twins hidden to control the narrative of their lives. At night, alone in his cabin, he replayed her words from the diner. I wanted them to have an everyday life. The implication that he couldn't provide, that stung, that she'd judged him unfit without giving him a chance. He wanted to be part of their world, but her secrecy felt like a wall he couldn't breach. "Mia, we need to talk," he said one evening, standing on her porch after the twins were asleep. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed his frustration. "I can't keep pretending this is okay. You hid my kids from me. For years. Do you know what that feels like?" Mia crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "I know it hurts, David, but I did what I thought was right. You don't know what it's like to live with nothing to fight for every scrap of safety. With people like Victor Lang circling, I wouldn't let them grow up in your world." David's jaw tightened at the mention of Victor. "Don't bring him into this. This is about us, you deciding I didn't deserve to know my children. You think I wanted this?" Mia's voice rose sharp and raw. "I was alone, David. Pregnant, scared, with no one to lean on. I didn't know you, not really. One night doesn't make you a father." Her words cut deep, and David stepped back, his hands clenched. "So what now? You expect me to walk away? Pretend they don't exist?" "No," she said softer now, her eyes glistening. "But I need you to understand why I did it. And I need you to prove you can be the man they need, not just the billionaire on the magazine covers." The argument ended without resolution, and Mia made a decision that broke her heart. She told David he couldn't see the twins until they figured things out. "I need space," she said, her voice trembling for their sake. David left his anger simmering, but he didn't argue. He saw the fear in her eyes, the fierce protectiveness, and knew pushing her would only make things worse. The next day, Mia took the twins and left Willow Creek for a nearby town, staying with a friend to put distance between her and David. She needed time to think to protect her children from the chaos she felt coming. But chaos was already closing in, and it wore Victor Lang's face. Victor had been busy. His investigator's report had confirmed the twins' parentage, and he saw an opportunity to destroy David. He leaked a story to a tabloid painting Mia as a gold digger who'd seduced David for his money and was now hiding his children to extort him. The story spread like wildfire, amplified by social media and gossip columns. Unaware at first, Mia was blindsided when a reporter showed up at her friend's house, asking questions about her secret affair with David Caldwell. The twins were inside, oblivious, but Mia felt the walls closing in. She'd spent 5 years building a quiet life now unraveling. David saw the news in Willow Creek and felt a surge of rage. The article was vicious, smearing Mia's name with lies and innuendo. He knew instantly who was behind it. Victor's fingerprints were all over the story, from the carefully chosen photos to the calculated wording. David called Mia, but she didn't answer. Her phone was off to avoid the barrage of calls from reporters. He drove to her apartment, only to find it empty, her neighbors saying she'd left town for a few days. David's anger turned to determination. He wasn't just fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for his family, a family he'd only discovered. He hired a private investigator, not to spy on Mia, but to dig into Victor's dealings. The investigator uncovered emails linking Victor to the tabloid and evidence of financial irregularities at Nexus. It wasn't enough to take him down, but it was a start. Mia, meanwhile, was reeling. The media storm had followed her to her friend's house, and she felt trapped, her carefully built life crumbling. She looked at Emma and Noah playing in the backyard and felt a fierce resolve. She'd done everything to protect them, but realized she couldn't do it alone. David's world had found her. Whether she trusted him or not, he was part of this. The question was whether she could let him in, or if the fractures in their trust were too deep to mend. The air in Willow Creek had turned colder, the autumn leaves, now a carpet of crimson and amber crunching underfoot. Mia Harper sat on the couch in her friend's small house in a neighboring town, her phone screen dark but heavy with unread notifications. The tabloid story had exploded, painting her as a scheming opportunist who'd hidden David Caldwell's children for profit. Reporters had begun circling their calls relentless, and Mia felt the walls of her carefully built life closing in. Emma and Noah were playing in the next room, their laughter contrasting with the storm brewing in her heart. She'd fled Willow Creek to protect them, but the media's reach was long, and Victor Lang's venom had found her. David Caldwell, meanwhile, was back in Manhattan, his penthouse office at Nexus Innovations, a fortress of glass and steel that felt more like a battlefield. The tabloid story had hit him like a sucker punch, not just for its lies about Mia, but for the audacity of Victor's move. His CFO had crossed a line weaponizing David's personal life to destabilize his leadership. David's investigator had confirmed Victor's involvement emails to the tabloid payments to the private investigator who'd tracked Mia, and a trail of subtle manipulations designed to paint David as reckless. But Victor didn't fully know about the twins, and David intended to keep it that way. He sat at his desk, the city skyline sprawling beyond the window, and redialed his investigator. "I need more," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Anything that ties Victor to the leaks or the financial discrepancies. He's not just coming for my job, he's targeting my family." The investigator promised results, but David wasn't waiting. He drove to Willow Creek, determined to find Mia and make things right. Her apartment was empty, the curtains drawn, and a neighbor said she'd left with the twins days ago. David's frustration mounted, but so did his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for Nexus anymore. He was fighting for Emma and Noah, the family he'd only discovered. He sent Mia a text, "I know about the story. It's Victor. I'm handling it. Please tell me where you are." She didn't reply, but he wasn't giving up. Mia, meanwhile, was grappling with her own fears. The friend she was staying with, a kind-hearted librarian named Sarah, had urged her to confront the situation. Sarah said, "You can't keep running pouring tea in the cramped kitchen. This guy David, he's their father. And from what you've told me, he's not the monster you're afraid of." "He's not a monster," Mia admitted, stirring her tea absently. "But his world is. The money, the power, the people like Victor Lang, they destroy everything they touch. I can't let that happen to Emma and Noah." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes gentle but firm. "You're not alone anymore, Mia. He knows about the kids. It may be time to let him help." Mia wanted to argue, but Sarah's words hit home. She'd spent 5 years protecting the twins alone, but the media storm had shown her how vulnerable she was. Victor's attack wasn't just about her. It was about David, and by extension, their children. She pulled out her phone, staring at David's message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. She typed, "I'm safe. We need to talk. Meet me at the Willow Creek Library at 3 p.m. tomorrow, send," before she can change her mind. The next day, David arrived at the library, a quaint brick building with ivy creeping up its walls. Mia was waiting in a quiet corner, surrounded by worn bookshelves. The twins were at a nearby table, engrossed in a puzzle under Sarah's watchful eye. David's heart clenched at the sight of them, but he focused on Mia, who looked exhausted but resolute. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting across from her. "I didn't know Victor would go this far, but I'm handling it. I've got people digging into his finances and his contacts. He's not getting away with this." Mia nodded, her expression guarded. "It's not just about Victor. It's about what comes next. The press, the attention, it's already too much. I can't have Emma and Noah caught in this." "I won't let that happen," David said, his voice fierce. "They're my kids too, Mia. I'll protect them, and you." She wanted to believe him, but trust was fragile, and hers had been broken too many times. "How you're fighting a war at your company. You can't be everywhere." David leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm not just fighting for Nexus. I'm fighting for us, for them. Victor's coming for me, but he's not getting near our family. I need you to trust me just a little." Mia's throat tightened. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the same spark she'd seen at the Waldorf Astoria that night. But she also saw his weight, the strain of a man stretched thin by betrayal and ambition. "I'll try," she said finally. "But if this worsens, I'm taking them and leaving for good." David nodded, accepting her terms. He reached out, hesitating, then touched her hand. "I won't let you down." Their conversation was cut short by Noah's excited shout as he completed the puzzle. David smiled, and for a moment the tension eased. He spent the next hour with the twins, helping them build a tower of blocks, his laughter mingling with theirs. Mia watched, her heart torn between hope and fear. She wanted to believe in David, but Victor's shadow loomed large, and she knew the battle was far from over. Back in Manhattan, Victor was escalating his plan. The tabloid story had done its job sowing doubt among Nexus's board, but he needed more to topple David. He met with a contact in a dimly lit bar, a journalist with a knack for digging up dirt. "Find out everything you can about Mia Harper." Victor instructed temperament de famille, sliding an envelope of cash across the table. "I want her past, her present, her secrets. She's the key to breaking Caldwell." The journalist nodded, pocketing the envelope. "What's so special about her?" Victor smirked. "She's his weakness, and I'm going to exploit it." As David drove back to Willow Creek that evening, his mind was on Mia and the twins. He didn't know the full extent of Victor's plans, but he knew enough to be afraid not for himself, but for the family he was beginning to understand. For the first time, he felt the weight of something bigger than his company, and it changed everything. The Willow Creek library was quiet, save for the soft rustle of pages and the occasional cough. Mia Harper sat at a table near the back, a stack of children's books in front of her, though her mind was elsewhere. The twins were at preschool, and the rare moment of solitude gave her time to think, too much time. The past week had been a whirlwind. David's reappearance, the revelation of the twins' parentage, the tabloid story, and now, the fragile truce they'd forged at their last meeting. She wanted to trust him, but her heart was a battleground of fear and longing, torn between the safety of her solitary life and the pull of a connection she'd never forgotten. David was back in Manhattan, but his presence lingered in her thoughts. He'd promised to protect her and the twins, to take down Victor Lang, but Mia knew the cost of such promises. Her childhood had been a lesson in broken trust, parents who vanished, promises unkept, and she'd built her life on self-reliance. Letting David in meant risking that, and the thought terrified her. Yet watching him with Emma and Noah, seeing the love in his eyes, had stirred something she couldn't ignore. He wasn't just the billionaire from that night. He was a man who wanted to be a father, a man who might fight for them. David, meanwhile, was waging his own war. In his Nexus office, he pored over the investigators' latest findings, bank records, showing Victor's unauthorized transfers to offshore accounts. It was damning evidence, but not enough to end him. Victor was too clever, covering his tracks with layers of deniability. David's frustration grew, but a new purpose tempered it. For years, his life had been about Nexus, about winning. Now, it was about Emma, Noah, and Mia. The thought of them gave him strength and fear. He couldn't fail them. He called Mia that afternoon, his voice steady but urgent. "I'm making progress on Victor. We've got evidence of financial misconduct, but I need more time. How are you holding up?" Mia stood in her kitchen phone, pressed to her ear, staring at a photo of the twins. "It's hard. The reporters are gone, but I'm still getting calls. I want them to leave us alone." "I'm working on it," David said. "I'm coming back to Willow Creek tomorrow. I want to see the kids. And you." Mia hesitated, her heart racing. "Okay, but we're not there yet, David. I need to know this is safe." "I know," he said softly. "I'll prove it." The next day, David arrived at Mia's apartment, a modest space filled with warmth and traces of the twins' crayon drawings on the fridge toys scattered on the rug. Emma and Noah ran to him, their shyness fading as they showed him their latest artwork. Mia watched from the doorway, her chest tight. David was gentle and patient, asking Emma about her drawing of a dragon, and Noah about his toy spaceship. For a moment, she let herself imagine a life where this was normal, where they were a family. But the thought was quickly overshadowed by reality. Victor's attack, the media, the uncertainty of David's world. After the twins went to play, David turned to her, his expression serious. "I'm close to nailing Victor. My investigator found a paper trail payments to the tabloid to the PI who followed you. It's enough to start building a case." Mia's eyes narrowed. "Start, David, this needs to end. The twins can't grow up like this with their mother's name dragged through the mud." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "I'm not stopping until he's gone. But I was hoping you could believe in me. I'm not the man you met 5 years ago. I'm not just fighting for my company. I'm fighting for us." Mia's breath caught. The word us hung between them, heavy with possibility. She wanted to reach for him to bridge the gap, but fear held her back. "I've been on my own a long time, David. Trusting someone, it's not easy." He nodded, his eyes soft. "I get it. I'm not asking for everything, just a chance." Their conversation was interrupted by a call from David's investigator. "We've got something big," the man said. "Victor's been meeting with a rival company discussing a takeover. He's planning to use the scandal to push you out." David's jaw clenched. "Get me everything. Names, dates, documents." As he hung up, Mia watched him, seeing the fire in his eyes. She wanted to believe he could win, but the stakes were higher now. It wasn't just about them. It was about Emma and Noah, about the life she'd fought to give them. She took a step toward him, her voice low. "If you're going to do this, do it right. No mistakes." David met her gaze, his resolve unwavering. No mistakes. That night, as Mia tucked the twins into bed, she felt the weight of her decision. Trusting David meant risking everything, but running meant losing the chance at something more. Her heart was torn between the safety of solitude and the hope of a family. In Manhattan, David sat in his office staring at the evidence against Victor, knowing the battle ahead would test everything he was. For the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. He was fighting for them. The Nexus Innovations boardroom was a sleek, modern arena of glass and steel, its long mahogany table reflecting the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. David Caldwell stood at the head of the table, his posture steady, his eyes sharp with purpose. The board members sat in tense silence, their faces mixed with curiosity and unease. Victor Lang leaned back in his chair, his smirk barely concealed, confident that his latest maneuvers had tipped the scales in his favor. The tabloid scandal about Mia Harper had sown doubt among the board, painting David as reckless, a liability to the company he'd built. But David had a weapon of his own, a dossier of evidence that could end Victor's game. The past week had been a whirlwind. David's investigator had uncovered a damning trail: emails, bank records, and recorded conversations linking Victor to a rival company plotting a hostile takeover of Nexus. The tabloid story was just the beginning. Victor had orchestrated it to weaken David's credibility, paving the way for a board vote to oust him. But David had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment, his focus razor sharp. He wasn't just fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for Mia, Emma, and Noah, and the family he'd only just begun to know. "Ladies and gentlemen," David began, his voice calm but commanding. "We've faced challenges before, but today I'm here to address a threat from within." He slid a stack of folders across the table, each containing copies of the evidence. Victor Lang has been working against Nexus, colluding with competitors and leaking sensitive information to undermine our stability. The room erupted in murmurs. Victor's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as he reached for a folder. "This is absurd," he said, flipping through the pages. "Fabricated nonsense." "You're desperate, David." David didn't flinch. "The evidence speaks for itself. Emails to Horizon Tech detailing our proprietary AI algorithms. Payments to a tabloid to smear my name and destabilize the board's confidence. And a recorded call where you discuss a takeover bid Victor with you positioned as the new CEO." The board members exchanged glances, their unease palpable. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Chen, spoke up. "These are serious allegations, David. Can you substantiate them?" David nodded to his assistant, who projected the key documents onto a screen. The emails were clear, and the bank transfers were undeniable. The room grew quieter as the recording played, Victor's voice smug and calculating, outlining his plan to seize control. The board's mood shifted, their trust in Victor crumbling. Victor stood, his face flushed. "This is a setup. You've doctored these files to frame me, then explain the offshore accounts." David said, his tone icy. "Explain the $500,000 transfer to a shell company tied to Horizon, or the private investigator you hired to follow me and Mia Harper." The mention of Mia sent a ripple through the room. The tabloid story had made her a topic of gossip, and David saw the board's curiosity sharpen. He took a breath, knowing this was the moment to take control, not just of Nexus, but of his narrative. He said, "Mia Harper is not a gold digger or a schemer." His voice steady. "She's the mother of my children, Emma and Noah, twins I didn't know about until recently. Victor used her to attack me to distract you from his betrayal. But I'm done hiding. I'm their father, and I'll protect them just as I protect this company." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. David's vulnerability, his admission of a personal life the board hadn't known, humanized him, in a way his polished CEO persona never had. Eleanor leaned forward, her expression softening. "Why didn't you tell us about your children, David?" "Because I only just found out," he said, his voice raw. "Mia kept them secret to protect them from this world, our world. But I'm not ashamed of them, or of her. And I won't let Victor's lies tear my family apart." The board voted within the hour. Victor was removed as CFO, and his access to Nexus systems was revoked. Security escorted him out, his protests echoing down the hall. David felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. As he left the boardroom, his phone buzzed with a new alert. A fresh tabloid story, this one even uglier. Victor leaked more lies in a final act of spite, claiming Mia had blackmailed David to protect her. The story included doctored photos and grainy images of Mia that painted her as manipulative and deceitful. David's blood boiled. He called his investigator, his voice tight. "Find out where this came from. Victor's not done. He's lashing out. And get me everything you can on his contacts in the media." Back in Willow Creek, Mia was unaware of the new story. She'd returned to her apartment, the twins back in their routine, though the shadow of the first tabloid piece lingered. She avoided her phone, relying on Sarah to filter out the noise. But when Sarah showed up at her door that evening, her face grim, Mia knew something was wrong. "It's bad," Sarah said, handing her a tablet. The news story was vicious, accusing Mia of extortion and worse. The comments online were brutal, tearing into her character and her life. Mia's hands shook as she read, her heart sinking. "He's not going to stop, is he?" she whispered. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "David's fighting this, Mia. You said he's got evidence against this guy Victor. Maybe it's time to trust him." Mia nodded, but her fear was a living thing clawing at her resolve. She thought of Emma and Noah asleep in their beds and felt a fierce need to protect them. She texted David, saw the new story. "I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving with the kids tomorrow. David's reply came instantly. Don't run. I'm coming to you. I've taken down Victor at Nexus. I'll handle this. Please wait for me. Mia stared at the message, her heart torn. Running was her instinct, her way of surviving. But David's words, his promise to fight, stirred something in her, a hope she'd buried long ago. She didn't reply, but she didn't pack her bags either. She sat by the window, staring at the stars over Willow Creek, and waited for the man who might change everything. David worked through the night in Manhattan, coordinating with his investigator and a crisis PR firm to counter Victor's lies. He knew the battle wasn't over. Victor's spite ran deep, and the media storm was far from finished. But for the first time, David felt a clarity of purpose. He wasn't just saving Nexus. He was keeping his family and fighting with everything he had to prove it. The dawn broke over Willow Creek, with a soft golden light painting the hills in hues of amber and rose. Mia Harper stood at her kitchen counter brewing coffee as the twins' laughter drifted from their bedroom. Emma insists that she can fly like a superhero, while Noah patiently explains why her cape, a pillowcase, wouldn't help. Mia smiled despite the weight in her chest. The latest tabloid story had hit her hard, its lies cutting deeper than she'd expected. She'd spent the night wrestling with her instincts to pack up, take the twins, and disappear to a place where no one knew her name. But David's text, his plea to stay, had stopped her for now. She'd agreed to meet him at the park, a neutral space where the twins could play while they talked. As she dressed, Emma and Noah, her mind churned. Trusting David meant letting go of control, a risk she'd avoided since childhood. But running meant denying the twins their father and denying herself the chance at something more. She wasn't sure she could do either. David arrived at the park early, his car a sleek contrast to the rustic charm of Willow Creek. He wore jeans and a sweater, a far cry from his usual tailored suits, but his eyes carried the same intensity. He spotted Mia pushing the twins on the swings, her expression guarded but softer than before. The sight of Emma and Noah, their laughter echoing, filled him with a warmth he hadn't known he could feel. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, standing beside her. "I know it's not easy." Mia nodded, her eyes on the twins. "I almost left last night, packed a bag and everything, but I didn't." David's relief was palpable, though he kept his voice steady. "I'm glad you stayed." "I meant what I said, Mia. I've taken Victor down at Nexus. He's out, and I have a team working to kill the tabloid stories. I'm not letting him hurt you or the kids." She turned to him, her gaze searching. "And what happens when the next Victor comes along? Your world doesn't stop spinning, David. The media, the power plays, it's endless. I don't want that for them." David took a step closer, his voice low but fierce. "I'm not just a billionaire, Mia. I'm not just Nexus. I'm their father, and yours if you'll let me be. I've been fighting for my company my whole life, but I'm fighting for you now, for us. I'm sorry I doubted you and let my anger get in the way. I want to be the man you and the kids need." Mia's throat tightened, his words hitting her like a wave. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the same spark from that night 5 years ago, but now tempered with purpose. She wanted to believe him, but fear still gnawed at her. "I've been running my whole life," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "From my past, from people who let me down. I don't know how to stop." David reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You don't have to run alone anymore. Let me in, Mia. Let me prove it." She looked at their joined hands, then at the twins, who were now chasing each other across the grass. Tears welled in her eyes, and she let them fall, a release of years of holding everything together. "Okay," she said finally. "But if this goes wrong, David, if they get hurt, they won't, he said, his voice a vow. I swear it. They spent the afternoon with the twins, David pushing Noah on the swing, while Mia helped Emma climb the monkey bars. They were just a family for a few hours, the world's weight fading. But Mia knew the storm wasn't over. The tabloid stories were circulating, and Victor's influence lingered, even if he'd been ousted from Nexus. That evening, as Mia tucked the twins into bed, David sat with her in the living room, a plan forming. I'm going public, he said. A press conference tomorrow. I'll tell the truth about us, the twins. Victor's lies. It's the only way to take control of the narrative. Mia's heart raced. That's a considerable risk, David. The media, they'll tear into us. I know, he said, meeting her gaze. But hiding hasn't worked. The truth is our best weapon. I'll protect you, Mia. I'll protect them. She nodded, her fear tempered by a growing trust. Okay, but I'm there with you. We do this together. David smiled, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Together. As they sat quietly, the twins' soft snores drifting from the next room, Mia felt a shift inside her. For the first time, she wasn't alone in the fight. David was here, not just as the man from that night, but as a partner, a father. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she wasn't running. She was standing her ground, and David was standing with her. The moon hung low over Willow Creek, casting a pale glow across the quiet streets. Mia Harper stood at her apartment window, the curtains parted just enough to see the empty road below. The twins, Emma and Noah, were asleep in their shared bedroom, their soft breathing a comforting rhythm in the otherwise silent space. The decision to stay to trust David Caldwell had settled over her like a fragile truce, but unease still lingered. The press conference David had planned for the next day loomed large, a public declaration of their truth, a risky move to reclaim their narrative from Victor Lang's lies. Mia wanted to believe it would work, but the weight of the past weeks, the tabloid stories, and Victor's relentless malice made her wary. David was back in his rented cabin on the edge of town, finalizing the press conference details with his PR team via video call. He'd spent the day with Mia and the twins, their time at the park, a fleeting moment of normalcy that had strengthened his resolve. The evidence against Victor was airtight: bank records, emails, and recordings that proved his betrayal at Nexus Innovations. The board had ousted him, but David knew Victor too well to think he'd go quietly. The man was a viper, and his final tabloid attack had been a warning shot. David's security team had installed cameras and alarms at Mia's apartment as a precaution, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. In Manhattan, Victor Lang sat in a dimly lit hotel room, his polished exterior replaced by a restless agitation. The loss of his position at Nexus had been a blow, but he wasn't done. Over the years, he'd built a network of contacts, journalists, private investigators, and less savory types who owed him favors. The press conference David had announced was a direct challenge, and Victor saw it as his last chance to strike. He didn't know the full extent of David's evidence, but knew enough to feel cornered, and cornered men were dangerous. Victor called a contact known only as Reyes, a man with a reputation for getting things done, no questions asked. Victor said he needed a message, sent his voice low and cold. Mia Harper, Willow Creek. Make it clear she's not untouchable. Reyes's voice crackled through the phone, calm and professional. Do you want a scare or something more? A scare, Victor replied. Enough to make them run. But no traces back to me. The call ended, and Victor leaned back, a smirk curling his lips. He didn't need to destroy David outright, not yet. Disrupting his newfound family, forcing Mia to flee, would be enough to fracture David's focus and weaken his resolve. Victor poured himself a drink, savoring the thought of chaos to come. Back in Willow Creek, Mia was unaware of the danger closing in. She sat on the couch, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, her mind replaying the day with David. His promise to protect them and his gentle laughter with the twins had stirred something in her, a hope she'd buried long ago. But hope was fragile, and the tabloid stories had left scars. She checked her phone, seeing a new message from David. "Everything's set for tomorrow. We'll do this together. Sleep well." She smiled faintly, typing a quick reply. "Okay. See you in the morning." The night was still the town asleep when a shadow moved outside Mia's apartment. Clad in black, Reyes slipped through the alley behind the bookstore, his tools silent as he turned off the outer lock. David's security system was good, but Reyes was better, a professional who'd bypassed more sophisticated setups. His goal was simple: break and leave a threatening note and vanish. Enough to spook Mia into running as Victor had instructed. But David's precautions were more thorough than Victor had anticipated. When Reyes tampered with the lock, a silent alarm triggered, sending an alert to David's phone and the local security company. In his cabin, David bolted upright, the notification lighting up his screen. His heart raced as he called Mia, but her phone went to voicemail. She'd turned it off to sleep. He grabbed his keys and sped toward her apartment, dialing the security company as he drove. "Get to Mia Harper's place now," he barked. "Someone's trying to break in." Mia stirred at a faint noise, a soft click from the front door. She sat up, her pulse quickening, and crept to the twins' room to check on them. Emma and Noah were fast asleep, their faces peaceful. She grabbed a kitchen knife, her instincts kicking in, and moved toward the living room. The door was ajar, a sliver of moonlight revealing a figure slipping inside. Mia froze, her grip tightening on the knife, every muscle tensed for a fight. Before Reyes could proceed, the security system's floodlights blazed on, illuminating the apartment in stark white light. A siren wailed, shattering the silence. Reyes cursed, retreating as footsteps pounded up the stairs. Local security alerted by the alarm. Mia shouted, "Stay back!" her voice sharp with fear and defiance. The knife raised. Reyes vanished into the night, his mission aborted, but the damage was done. Mia's heart pounded, her breath ragged, as she locked the door and rechecked the twins, her hands shaking. David arrived minutes later, his car screeching to a halt. He ran up the stairs, finding Mia in the living room, the knife still in her hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice urgent as he scanned her for injuries. She nodded, her eyes wide. Someone was here. They tried to get in, but the alarm. David pulled her into his arms, his relief overwhelming. "You're safe. The kids, they're fine," she said, her voice trembling. "They didn't wake up." The security team swept the area, finding traces of the break-in tools, a cut wire, but no sign of the intruder. David called his investigator, his voice cold. "It's Victor. I know it. Find out who he hired and get me everything." Mia sat on the couch, the knife now on the coffee table, her fear giving way to anger. "This is what I was afraid of, David. Your world, it follows you. It almost reached my kids." He knelt in front of her, his eyes fierce. "I know, and I'm sorry. But I'm ending this, Mia. Victor's done. I'll make sure of it." She looked at him, seeing the determination in his face, the love in his eyes. For the first time, she saw him not as a threat, but as a shield. He'd risked everything to get to her, to protect them. She reached for his hand, her voice soft. "I saw you tonight, David. You didn't hesitate. You were here." "I'll always be here," he said, squeezing her hand. "For you, for them." The police arrived, taking statements and securing the scene. David stayed with Mia, refusing to leave her side. By morning, his investigator had a lead. Reyes, a known fixer with ties to Victor's network. The evidence was mounting enough to tie Victor to the attempted break-in. As the sun rose, David and Mia decided that the press conference would go forward. But now, It was more than a defense. It was a declaration of war against Victor's malice. They sat together watching Emma and Noah eat breakfast, unaware of the night's terror. Mia leaned against David, her fear easing in his presence. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt they could face it together. A year had passed since the night of terror in Willow Creek, and the small town had settled back into its quiet rhythm. The Willow Creek Art Festival was in full swing again, its streets alive with color and music, the air rich with the scent of cider and fresh-baked bread. Mia Harper stood at her booth, her photographs drawing crowds as always. But this year was different. Beside her were Emma and Noah, now 5, their faces bright with pride, as they showed off their own artwork crayon drawings and watercolors displayed on a small easel. And standing with them, his arm around Mia, was David Caldwell, no longer a stranger, but a fixture in their lives. The press conference had been a turning point. David and Mia had stood together in front of cameras, their voices steady as they told their story, the truth about the twins' Victor's betrayal and their commitment to their family. The media frenzy that followed was intense, but David's PR team, armed with evidence, had dismantled Victor's lies. The final blow came when David's investigator uncovered direct proof of Victor's involvement in the break-in at Mia's apartment phone records and a recorded confession from Reyes, who'd turned on Victor to save himself. Victor was arrested for conspiracy and fraud, his empire of deceit crumbling as he faced charges that would keep him behind bars for years. The aftermath wasn't easy. The tabloids lingered, but David's transparency had shifted the narrative. Initially hungry for scandal, the public grew enamored with the story of a billionaire fighting for his family. Mia, once vilified, became a symbol of resilience, her photography gaining national attention. She'd hesitated at first, wary of the spotlight, but David's support and the twins' joy at their new life had eased her fears. They'd found a balance, splitting their time between Willow Creek and a modest apartment in New York. David had stepped back from Nexus, delegating day-to-day operations to a trusted COO, freeing him to be a father and partner. He'd learned to change diapers, read bedtime stories, and navigate the chaos of parenting twins. Meanwhile, Mia embraced her growing fame. Her landscapes featured in galleries from Manhattan to San Francisco. But her heart remained in Willow Creek, where she taught art classes and watched her children grow. Emma tugged at David's sleeve at the festival, holding up a drawing. "Look, Daddy, it's us." The picture showed 4 stick figures, a family under a bright sun holding hands. David's throat tightened as he knelt to hug her, his eyes meeting Mia's over Emma's shoulder. Noah joined them, his quiet smile a mirror of David's, and Mia felt a warmth she'd never known. This was the life she'd been afraid to dream of, the family she'd fought to protect. The festival buzzed around them, but it was just the 4 of them for a moment. David lifted Noah onto his shoulders, pointing out a kite soaring above the crowd, while Mia helped Emma arrange her drawings. The townsfolk, now familiar with their story, offered smiles and kind words, no longer seeing Mia as an outsider, but as one of their own. David, too, had become a part of Willow Creek, his presence no longer a novelty, but a comfort. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the festival, Mia and David sat on a bench, the twins playing nearby. "I was scared," Mia admitted, her voice soft. "That night a year ago, I thought I'd lose everything." David took her hand, his touch steady. "I was scared too, not of Victor, but of losing you and the kids. I didn't know if I could be the man you needed." "You are," she said, leaning against him. "You showed up, David, every time." He smiled, kissing her forehead. "And I always will." The festival ended with a fireworks display, the sky bursting with color as Emma and Noah clapped and cheered. Mia and David watched, their hands entwined, the twins' laughter, a melody that anchored them. The journey had been long fraught with betrayal and fear, but they'd come through it together. Emma's drawing, now tucked safely in David's wallet, symbolized their hard-won wholeness, a family forged not just by blood, but by choice, by love that refused to break. Mia looked at David, her heart full as the last firework faded. "We made it," she whispered. He squeezed her hand, his eyes on their children. "Yeah, we did."